The first event of the season in Abu Dhabi saw a tremendous start from the second row for Enrique Bernoldi in the Nissan, charging through to the front as the Ford of Maxime Martin lost ground. The Nissan went out in front. Meanwhile, Peter Dumbreck was busy defending his second place from the Ford, but Max Martin was having none of it and moved into second place to go chasing after the all-Brazilian Nissan that was still leading the race. As we approached the first round of pit stops, everybody knew it was going to be a tight battle once they came in. The top 5 cars were virtually together as they came into pit lane. Enrique Bernoldi led the queue, followed by Maxime Martin. Handing over to Ricardo Zolder in the Nissan and to Fred Makovicky in the Ford. But this is where it all got a little bit difficult. Zolder got away well, Makovicky got away from the inside, but up front, the Aston, the Hex's Aston, was ahead of everybody, almost unseen. The clash between Nissan and Ford continued throughout most of the pit lane. Eventually the Ford got in front, but it was in the wrong as it should have given way. The puncture caused to Ricardo Zonta's car meant that they basically didn't play a part in the rest of the day. And it was Richard Westbrook taking over the number 22 Nissan who managed to get out in front of the Ford GT to move into what was now second place. And that was because the Hex's Aston Martin, now being driven by newcomer Stef Dusseldorp, had got in front of everybody, and this car had a 6-second lead. Well, Westbrook was able to close that gap up, and in the final laps began to put the car shared by Clivio Piccioni under increasing pressure. But despite everything that Richard Westbrook threw at him, the youngster held firm, and Stef Dusseldorp came through to take the first win of the season for the Hex's Aston Martin team. An absolutely brilliant result from the small team that had delivered first time out in 2011. Westbrook and Dumbreck celebrated their second place with Basseng and Winkelhock third. From the United Arab Emirates, the FIA GT1 World Championship has swept into the Zolder circuit in northeast Belgium. Aston Martin started strongly in Abu Dhabi, but the weekend went backwards for the young driver team. Thomas Enger crashed at the start of the qualifying race and ultimately had to settle for 6th in the championship race, while the number 8 car of Turner and Mucker looked set to win the first race until an errant wheel nut caught them out. The Hex's AMR team more than made up for that with 4th and victory in the main race following a brilliant defensive drive from rookie Stef Dusseldorp.
I had an amazing start of the season, of course. No one expected to win in Abu Dhabi, neither did I. So we're now here as championship leaders, and it's a bit of my home track. Of course, I do my best and I hope to score some more points for the championship. It's going to be a little more difficult with 30 kilo extra, but yeah, we do our best.
Corvette may only be represented by 2 cars, but the American Warhorse is still a contender. Mike Hazemans is a former hat-trick winner of the Zolder 24-hour race, and it's a track well known to his young Dutch teammate, who was impressive despite the odd error last time. Meanwhile, the DKR Corvette is driven by 2 newcomers, Brazilian former IndyCar driver Jamie Camara and French pilot Michael Rossi, who finished 2nd in the SEAT Eurocup last year.
My first race in GT was a very good experience, very good challenge. New car, new track, new drivers. I was motivated to come here in Zolder. I know the track better than Abu Dhabi, and I was motivated to improve because I realized that my step to arrive to the top is bigger than before. But for my first time, I have to say that everything was okay.
This is a big weekend for the Ford drivers as Zolder is home turf for both teams. Bas Linders will be anxious to put his engine problems behind him as he and Mark Canarici attempt to put points on the board. The other Mark VDS car won the qualifying race in Abu Dhabi and can be expected to be fast again here. At Belgian Racing, Milos Pavlovic and Martin Matska are chasing their first points, while we have 2 rookies in the other car in the shape of Matthias Besch and Vanina Ix.
I am very much looking forward to race this weekend in Zolder. Last time I was here it was 2008. And it was for the 24 hours, so it's a completely different mindset because here is a sprint race, 200% concentration from the first lap to the end. I hope we can have a consistent one with my teammate Matthias Besch.
The Lamborghini Murcielago is still being learnt by a Swiss racing team after a late deal left them only a few days to prepare for the first race. But Carl Wendlinger is a former FIA GT race winner here, and Peter Cox knows the place like the back of his hand. However, it is the Al Inkel team that might be expected to deliver results here, bearing in mind the podium at Abu Dhabi for Basseng and Winkelhock and the sheer pace of the Nicky Pastorelli Dominic Schwager car. fastest in qualifying, but which ultimately failed to score a single point at the last event due to incidents at the start of both races.
We had a lot of bad luck in Abu Dhabi, and it was very disappointing. The mechanics did a great job to fix the car and everything, and we just couldn't get points. But the pace was really positive, and we're looking forward to this weekend in Zolder. I think also on this track we should be in the front, somewhere in the front, and collect some points for the championship.
Nissan left the Middle East with one pair of drivers sitting second in the points. Richard Westbrook has fond memories of this place because it was here that he wrapped up the GT2 title in 2009. And he and Peter Dunbreck will hope to build on the round one result. Over at Sumo Power, however, there was disappointment for the Brazilian lineup of Enrique Bernoldi and Ricardo Zonta after leading the first part of the main race. It all went wrong in the pit lane, thanks to an incident with a Ford and a problem with the seatbelts.
We finished our pit stop. I get in the car. When I just leave the garage, the Ford car was in front of us in the pit lane garage, and he just dropped the car in 90 degrees to my car and hit me in the pit lane. And as everybody knows, who is first on the pit line has the preference, and I think it was a big mistake from them to release the car before my car was in the fast line.
A tribute there to Martin Bartek, founder of the Martek team, who sadly passed away this week. Welcome to the Zolder circuit for round two of the FIA GT1 World Championship. I'm Ben Edwards. Alongside me is former winner of the Belgian Grand Prix on this circuit, John Watson, and with all the news and interviews from pit lane is Hayley Coxon. And the car's already on the grid in what is an absolutely beautiful spring day here in Belgium.
Well, I think you've got to put this date in your diary because of all the years I've been coming to Zolder. There have been very few as nice as we have seen both yesterday, today. Look at that sky, not a cloud to be seen, and hopefully Sunday will be equally nice.
Well, the track hasn't changed much over the years. They've introduced one or two chicanes since its original opening in 1963, but it provides a decent test for drivers and cars alike, John.
It certainly puts a big premium on car, and particularly on the car setup. We know that it's very hard on the left front, certainly left rear also going to get punishment. Hard on brakes because the straights here are relatively short. There's a lot of heavy braking all around the racetrack, so the brakes take a hammering also. So as well as speed, it's not just about being fast, it's slowly catch the monkey, as they say.
Looking at the Corvette there on back on the fourth row of the grid. A good effort by both Mike Hazeman and Nick Katzberg. But here is the number 4 Hexis Aston Martin, and well, a little bit of a surprise from the Hexis team. This car did well. Christian Hohenadel qualifying well up towards the front end of the grid, but the other car, the championship leading car of Clivio Piccioni, right down towards the back.
Yes, in the 7th row, and basically Clivio put his hand up and said, look, sorry guys, on the last lap of that first qualifying segment I made an error. We calculated it was only 0.7 of a second, but that 0.7 of a second was the biggest 0.7 of a second in Clivio Piccioni's career, because it meant they didn't move forward. They ought to have been in the final 8 to get through to this top 8 qualifying.
Richard Westbrook starts on the second row of the grid as second in the championship. They could become championship leaders, he and Peter Dumbreck, by the end of this race. Moving up onto the front row of the grid, though, we've got the number 8 Aston Martin, which is 6th in the points. A new pairing there in terms of Darren Turner and Stefan Mucker, but they're both vastly experienced with Aston Martin. But this is the car starting on pole. It is the number 37 Alinkle.com Munich Motorsport Lamborghini Murcielago. It should have started on pole last time in Abu Dhabi, but they got penalised for an infringement, a technical error in starting the car during qualifying, so they got demoted several places. They have yet to score a podium, in spite of it being the same driver lineup as they had last year, so that's really got to be their ambition. I'm sure they're going for the win, though, if they're starting from pole position. Nicky Pastorelli and Dominic Schwager.
Yes, but what was key to that pole lap was it was 0.5, half a second faster than the Muller-Enger Aston Martin alongside in the front row of the grid. So clearly the Lamborghini with Dominic Schwager and Nicky Pastorelli have got the pace. Whether they can make it last for the 1 hour of this race, whether they're going to overdrive the car, or whether the Aston alongside of Darren Turner, Stefan Mucker, will do enough at the start to get the advantage into turn 1, well, we'll know very shortly.
Yep, the cars are about to go away on their formation lap. You've got the 2 front row sitters there. The Lamborghini on the right, as you look at it, starting from pole position, scored absolutely nothing in Abu Dhabi after getting involved in a first corner accident that Thomas Enger caused. Well, Enger starts this race from the second row this time in his Aston Martin. It's Stefan Mucker in the other Aston Martin, the one that starts on the front row. First to the Nissans on that second row on the right as we look at it there. It is Richard Westbrook who shares the car with Peter Dumbreck. Good to see the crowds here already on the Saturday. This is the qualifying race, remember. Looking quickly on board the Stefan Mucker Aston Martin as they go away then on the formation lap.
So it's a short pit straight down to turn 1. Like most of the corners here at Zolder, but in particular turn 1, it's key not to overbrake. If you do, you'll run wide, you'll run into the gravel on the outside. We saw, in fact, Fred Makivicki in his Ford GT this morning get caught out by doing that. Also Carl Wendlinger in his Lamborghini. The key here in Zolder is brake slightly earlier, get the speed off, then you've got a very wide exit to drive the corner up to turns 2 and 3, which in effect are just one corner.
Remember, you can keep up with the timing and scoring on everything that's going on in this race at GT1world.com, where you can also catch up with lots of extra features, GT1 TV, where we go behind the scenes as well. So I hope you can log on to GT1world.com. Take a look at the cars. The front-engined V12-powered Aston Martin has proven to be pretty fast so far this weekend. It's starting on the front and second rows, but we've got a mid-engine car, the Lamborghini, that has actually taken pole.
Yes, and I mean the fundamental layout of the Lamborghini, like the Ford GT, is that of a pure racing car. For the Nissans and for the Aston Martins, well, they're more traditional in the GT layout, with the engine's fairly far back in the chassis. In fact, it almost intrudes in some cases right into the driver cockpit, but it's still effectively a front-engine car.
Quick look at the grid then, behind the Westbrook in his Nissan. On the third row of the grid, we've got Pagini in the Hexus Aston Martin, then that Corvette of Katzberg and Hesmond. Then we've got Brabham in the Nissan with Peter Cox in the Lamborghini, joining him on the fourth row, row 5. Another Nissan of Michael Krum, and the Ford of Makavicki, who went off in qualifying, starts on the fifth row, fast car that. Kamara in the Corvette, has Winkelhock in the Lamborghini alongside on row 6, row 7. Düsseldorf, the championship leaders, 13th place on the grid with the Brazilians in the Nissan 14th. Then Bassleiders up against Vanina X. That'll be interesting on the 8th row. 9th row of the grid is Yuri Yanak and Martin Matzke. So Vanina X, John, didn't get out in qualifying because her teammate didn't get them through to the second segment of qualifying, so she comes in cold as she makes her debut in GT1.
Well, that's about as tough as you can get for Vanina, and she deserves better than that, but those are the rules and the regulations. The car I'm going to keep an eye on is that number 3 Hexus Aston Martin. Stef Düsseldorf in the car drove an absolutely blinding race in Abu Dhabi. He's got to make progress. He's got to get his car hopefully up into the top 10, and that's going to be a reasonable ask starting from way back on the 7th row of the grid.
Yeah, but they made up 6 places through their pit stop in the first race in Abu Dhabi, and then they made up another 5 places in their second pit stop in the championship race. So the Hexus team were absolutely remarkable on their pit stops.
Well, it's so remarkable, it caught us out of the commentary booth. We could see it leading the race, but we didn't believe it. And it was only after further persuasion that we realised, yes, they are in the lead of the race.
We are getting ready for the qualifying race to get underway here at Zolder. Exquisite cars about to be hurled into the first corner, just millimetres apart and guided by professional racers who only care about winning. It's the green light, away we go, and the Aston and the Lamborghini are absolutely side by side as they head down towards the first corner. But it looks as though the Lamborghini has the edge. Stefan Booker trying to go around the outside. Oh, and Sven right in front of the pack, and Enger's avoided it, but somebody else grabbed the lead, and the leader spin right in front of everybody else into the first bend, and out already has gone one of the Mark VDS Fords. That's Bas Linder's car, and that car is out already.
And it's the Corvette leading the race. Can you believe it? The Lamborghini contact with the Aston, trying to go round the outside, and it just didn't happen. The contact came, and it was just made bedlam in the middle of turn one.
Enger has dropped down to about third or fourth. You're right, it's the Corvette that leads. So absolute chaos, and a really interesting start for Nicky Katzberg, the youngster in the Corvette that he shares with Mike Hazelmans. Look at the break he's got in the Team Exim China car. Second place has come the Makovicky Ford. That's amazing how they got up through from the outside of the fifth row, and that's up to second place.
Well, all well in bedlam in turn one. It was a question of see the gap. Hopefully by the time you get to it, it's going to be clear. So the Corvette fastest in the first sector, fastest in the second sector, and who could believe it?
Yeah, well, that really has put a cat amongst the chickens, and once again that Alinkel Lamborghini in trouble. Now the other one, I think that's the 38 car who's running up there in third, so that's had a great start, Marcus Winkelhock. But what do Schwager and Pastorelli have to do to get a podium finish in GT1? It just never works, whatever happens for them. So across the line at the end of the first lap, it's Katzberg who leads, from Makovicky in the Ford in second place, Winkelhock in a Lamborghini in third, Enger is fourth in the Aston, Peter Cox is up to fifth in his Lamborghini, Christian Hohenadel in the Aston is up to sixth place, Krum is in seventh in the Nissan, Brabham eighth, Bernoldi ninth, and the top 10 is completed by the championship leader, Steph Dusseldorf.
I would like to see the conversation that's going on between the Lamborghini and the Aston Martin after that little moment, because Nicky Pastorelli and Stefan Muka were the two cars that tried to make it one into turn one, and it didn't work for us.
Thomas Enger on the attack there, trying to get past Marcus Winkelhock. We saw Richard Westbrook coming into the pits in the number 22 Nissan. Bitterly disappointed for a team that hoped that they might be able to take the championship lead in this race. Points on offer for the qualifying race as well as the championship race, just not as many. The top two getting away a little bit, and Winkelhock is then sort of holding up this next group of cars. There's the work on Westbrook's car.
Yeah, a lot of damage left front, and that's, well, they can repair, they take the wheel tower off, but whether they are going to do anything, the bodywork they're going to leave. Interestingly, Stefan Muka, who was one of the two cars involved in that incident, has gone fastest in the second or first sector of the lap, and there he is trying to make up ground, gets through, dives down the inside of the Corvette.
Yeah, so Stefan Muka coming from way down. He's now up to 12th place, I think. Oh, and he made contact. He's on the grass, rubbing with the Ford. Well, that all seems pretty aggressive there, and the Corvette trying to take advantage, meanwhile, and has done so and squeezes the Ford out.
Yeah, no, that was very tough for the Ford. They really got bullied first by the Aston Martin, then by the Corvette, and now it's all pressure coming from the midfield.
Martin Matzke that was who got squeezed out. Let's take another look at the start here and try and find out where Muka and Pastorelli, what happened to them as they went into that first corner.
Side by side, but what Muka tries to do is go around the outside, maybe try to close the door on Nicky Pastorelli. Contact occurred, and that will, I mean, Muka will claim I had the corner, but he was on the outside of the corner. You can't shut the door. Just somewhere in that, there's the Ford pulling off to the left, bangs into the barrier already with a broken front suspension.
Let's take a look on board Muka here, John. This was how it looked from his point of view.
Well, he would say I was ahead. He would say that the Lamborghini drove into me.
Well, that ended him into the gravel. Certainly had a nose ahead. Here's another view of it as you look back. This is further back because the 38 car, that's Marcus Winkelhock. Oh, and that was a little nudge. Oh, in the middle of all that, my goodness.
Yeah, that was a little nudge, but that was not the front cars getting nudged. Those were cars that had made their way around the Aston Martin and the Lamborghini.
There is Peter Dumbreck just having a look, but Westbrook out of his car, so yeah, absolute disaster for them, a real disappointment. There's the race leader though, Mike Hazelmans will be taking over that Corvette. He's got a little smile on his face.
I think you should do him, and he must be absolutely delighted with the pace that the Corvette is showing right now, and holding its own against Makovicky in the Ford, and then further back with the Aston Martin.
So the leaders come across the line, no change up there. We've still got the Corvette of Katzberg leading from the Ford. What's all that smoke in the background there? coming out of the chicane. I don't know whether somebody's got.
Oh, there is a spin. Is that Muka?
Stefan Muka, yeah, it is.
He's been involved with somebody up at the. There's a damage to me to the left rear of that car. Is it? I think probably got a puncture or a suspension, one of the two. So Stefan Muka, who's been involved in 2 wars before this race, is little more than 5.5 minutes old.
Yeah, it just went past our commentary position. I had a quick look. I couldn't see a puncture, but there's definitely damage there.
Well, the car looks like it's crabbing. It doesn't look like it's running true.
Yeah.
So whether he got a little nerf in the final turn, 15-16 chicane, there it is. That looks like a nerf. But where's the car behind him? No, I think something failed.
Yeah.
Something on the car failed. That may well be the consequence of the contact that occurred in turn 1 with the Lamborghini of Nicky Pastorelli. So something has happened to the left rear and it's just let go in that final chicane.
So up front, the Corvette continues to lead this race from the Ford. Got some good racing going on further back here, though. Christian Hohenadel in the Aston Martin with the black and silver front there, being chased by the number 23 Nissan, and that's Michael Krum on board the Nissan, the German pairing of him and Lucas Law. Behind him is David Brabham in another Nissan, and then again another Nissan. That of Enrique Bernoldi, running 9th, is at the back of this particular chase. He's riding on board the Aston Martin with Christian Hohenadel in this car and doing a pretty good job at the moment. In fact, it's his teammate Andrea Piccini who starts the race, so Hohenadel did a good job in qualifying, but it's Piccini here we're looking back from, and Krum coming under a bit of attack himself, so he's got to watch his mirrors with David Brabham filling them.
Well, after that rather breathless start, we're sort of settling down, and the race will now begin to develop a pattern, and what is clear is that the Corvette's got a comfortable half a second lead over Makavicki in the Ford, and then we got Marcus Winkelhock third, just almost 2 seconds behind the second place Ford.
Yeah, and it's still Enger having a look at Winkelhock for third place there. That's quite an interesting tussle between those two. Top 4 have definitely made a little bit of a break from the 5th place car, which is Peter Kops in the Lamborghini. So these four cars just trying to get away a little bit as they come down through Villeneuve chicane. Nick Katzberg, new to GT1, but Mike Hazeman's impressed with him in Abu Dhabi. He knows the young lad, has worked with him before. First time that they've shared a car on such an international stage. But Katzberg doing a fine job here, chased by Makavicki, who's had a real sort of played the joker here, because after qualifying that car was damaged. But there are a number of drivers who are out of this race. Is that Stefan? I think it is. Just walking back up the Stefan Muka walking back up the pit lane, and that is very disappointing for him.
But young Nicky Katzberg is going to get pressure from young Makavicki, Frederick Makavicki in the Ford GT, who is going to be kept honest by Marcus Winkelhock, and behind the whole lot, Thomas Enger in the Aston. Nobody seems to be able to do anything, but the Ford certainly is the one of those 4 cars to me who looks the most threatening. Yeah,
Makavicki went off at this area of track in qualifying, just nerfed the barrier on the outside, but not too much damage was done. You can look at his sectors, and he's been catching over the last couple of laps. In fact, his overall lap times have been good, so potentially he's got the faster car. Chased there by Marcus Winkelhock, who finished 3rd in Abu Dhabi in the championship race with Marc Basseng, and he really managed to pick his way through the chaos at the start there. A little bit of luck involved, it depended where you were, but he certainly made the most of it. Still under pressure though from Thomas Enger right behind, who must have thought, oh no, it's all going to go wrong again, because there were cars spinning in front of him as he came through that first corner.
And the manner in which he tried to redeem himself in Abu Dhabi after being responsible for the incident at the start of the qualifying race was exemplary, and this time he knows just stay clean, out of trouble. You're in 4th place, long way to go, over 15 minutes of this race remaining.
Yeah, so they've got to settle down onto a sort of rhythm now. Hazeman's just waiting to see how his young driver Nick Katzberg gets on in this situation. So far he's not making any mistakes. He's got Fred Makavicki, who's made the switch this year, of course, from Aston Martin to this Ford GT, the Mark VDS run Ford, so it's home territory for the team. Fred will be out to try and make up for that mistake in qualifying, and he's doing a fine job here.
It's this part of the circuit where he thinks, or I think he's got maybe a slight advantage. Doesn't appear so from that onboard camera, but down the pit straight into turn 1, the Ford does run down the Corvette, but round the rest of the circuit everything looks right now to be pretty even Stevens.
Changes up to 4th just as he comes out of turn 1, and then through this fast right-hander here opposite the canal. There's his canal turn that they come through now, fast bend that one, and then up to a little dab on the brakes before the right-hander that takes them onto the back stretch here. The Corvette looks very stable. You're looking from the Corvette. Nice clear road in front of you here.
Lovely to have a clear road. The only thing is you don't want too much distraction going on behind you. What you can do, of course, is just turn that mirror in the car, turn it away from anything that's so your mind is clear, not cluttered, feeling the pressure from a very, very feisty Makoviecki behind in the Ford.
Plunging down through the section that is very much between the trees here, and again trying not to cut the curve too much.
Well, I was going to say Makoviecki needs to be careful, because if he gets any more ambitious in the curve in the middle of turn 9, the Villeneuve chicane, he may actually find himself being penalised. The drivers have been warned not to shortcut the track, and in particular that area of the circuit.
We're on board with the third place cars. You've got the onboards on these top 3 cars. Fascinating to watch the differences. This is the Lamborghini, the big V12 mid-engine car. Marcus Winkelhoff still getting up to speed in this car. He's only done the one event at Abu Dhabi, got a good result from it. Up ahead of him is that V8 powered mid-engine Ford, and then up ahead of all of them is the V8 front-engine Corvette, big 7-litre engine in the front of that Corvette. I say the front, it's so far back in the front that it's what a
bit of bodywork. I think there's bodywork from some point of contact that got flicked up. Now, I don't think any of these 4 cars were involved in the incident in turn 1, but nevertheless there are bits of carbon fibre bodywork all around the racetrack at turn 1.
Yeah, got to be careful about that. Back on board with Nick Katzberg then in, as I say, front engine Corvette with the engine so far back it's almost in the cockpit with the driver. So beautifully designed piece of kit, this Corvette, and looking very strong here. Look at that bright blue sky, perfect weather conditions, not too hot, not like it was in Abu Dhabi. The drivers won't be sweating away too much poundage in this race. Top 4 stay pretty close together though, John, and you know pit stops as ever are going to be crucial. We're a little way off them yet, but if they're this close you can easily go from 4th to 1st, as we saw the Hexus Aston Martin do last time.
Indeed, it's a different pit lane, it's a much narrower, although the cars are much better spaced out, ironically, because there's the length of the pit lane has been more segmented to give people ease of coming in and coming out. Let's hope we don't see an incident or replay of what we saw in Abu Dhabi, where Makoviecki and it was Ricardo Zonta in the Nissan got together, and that was adjudged to be really Makoviecki at fault. So I think the drivers now will not repeat what we saw there.
Quick view from the camera pointing rearwards from the 2nd place car there. For a moment there was a gap opened up, but Winkelhoff's got it back down again, hasn't he?
Yeah, I don't know, there's the length, that telephoto lens tends to make everybody look more compacted, because when you come onto the start-finish straight, the gap basically looks to be about the same. I'm just wondering, again, bodywork, you can see it being flicked up. I don't know whether that's from, I assume it's from something that happened at the start. Mind you, the incident happened in the exit of the corner, not the entry to the corner.
That's right. Looking further back, Tigini and the Aston still 6th. Then it's Krum there in the Nissan in 7th. David Brabham with the white-fronted Nissan, the Sumo Power car, is in 8th. Then Bernoldi, teammate, is in 9th place. Dusseldorp is in 10th. Vanina X, by the way, running well in 11th place, so she got ahead of a few cars on that opening lap. She's held her position. She's in 11th place. Martin Matzke currently in 12th. Tamara is in 13th, ahead of Yannick, and Stefan Booker we know is out, and of course several other retirements, including Richard Westbrook, Nicky Pastorelli, and of course Bas Linders.
A very good job from Vanina X to literally jump in stone cold and put herself into 13th position. It's a very difficult circuit, she knows it very well, but it's not an easy step for her to make into a strange car with very little time in it.
Top 2 just making a bit of a break again on this lap. Nick Katzberg still under pressure there from Fred Makoviecki. So the Corvette and the Ford just drawing away a touch from the Lamborghini and the Aston Martin behind them. Then there's that gap back to the 5th place Lamborghini of Peter Kops. He's having a quietish race at this stage.
I think one of the issues that everybody will be concerned about in this group of 4 cars, not so much Katzberg and the Corvette leading, but the other 3, is that they run really nose to tail to each other. We know it's a hard track on tyres, we know it's a very hard track on brakes, so by running so close you're denying your car the little cooling opportunities that you would normally have. So maybe by just dropping back and give yourself and the car that momentary break to recharge the brake cooling particularly.
Smiley faces from the co-drivers of the top 2. We saw Max Martin first of all, who's going to take over the car number 41, which is currently running 2nd. And of course we saw Mike Hasemans again, who's looking forward to taking over the Corvette. But a lot will depend on their crews and whether they get the tyre change done as fast as possible. Beginning to see a little bit more opening here, except between the top 2, because they're very close.
And I think Fred Makoviecki in the Ford following the Corvette is again applying pressure. He's not concerned very much about running close to the tail of the Corvette. He really wants to put more and more pressure on the young Dutchman and force him into an error, and maybe force him just to maybe outbrake himself and make the overtake even easier.
Yep, well, that's what he wants, but is that going to happen? We saw a great run from a youngster last time in Abu Dhabi in the Aston Martin, in Stef Dusseldorp, and Nick Katzberg is maintaining honour. He's only 23 years old, comes from Amersfoort in the Netherlands, knows this circuit pretty well. He's the European Renault Megane champion from last year and had 7 victories out of 13 races, so that's a pretty good scoring rate. Oh, and both Belgian racing Fords, the car of Vanina X and Martin Matzke. I do hope they haven't had it coming together.
Well, something's happened.
That's Vanina's car without
yes.
a rear wing.
So she's going to go straight into the pits. How that happened, we're not quite sure. She was ahead of the other Ford, and they were 11th and 12th. And I suspect Matzke's tried to take a dive bomb into Vanina going into the Villeneuve chicane. Let's look and see. Well, they're coming down. That's Vanina X ahead.
Yeah, it is.
And there it is down the inside. Well, I mean, dumb. How dumb can you get?
Oh,
I mean, not only is it dumb, it's your own teammate.
I know. Taken to the dirt there was Kamara in his Corvette.
And in fact, both cars have lost their rear wings because both rear wing end flaps interlocked and snatched the rear wing off both the Ford. Well, you shake your head, get them in and give him the you-know-what of his life.
Martin Matzke is not going to be a popular guy. That's him driving in. He's the guy that went into the back of Vanina X's car. I think he might have to park somewhere else.
Well, to be truthful, how you think you can overtake at that part of the racetrack is beyond me. And in fact, he didn't even attempt. He just bumped into the back of Vanina X's car. Vanina would not have really known he was about to do something as stupid as that. And she went round, and in the process, the rear wings interlocked, and therefore both of them are in the pits.
Those yellow cars have a magnetic attraction for one another. They did have a little bit of a coming together with different drivers in Abu Dhabi.
It's a boy-girl thing.
Is that what it is? He didn't want to be outdone. Well, I'll tell you what, he hasn't shone as a result, has he? Here
Look
we go.
at the pressure.
That's on the Ford. A bit of brake fire there on the carbon disc. Meanwhile, I'll tell you up front, it's pretty close, and Makawicki definitely putting a bit more pressure on the Corvette. Matzke gets out of his car, the other car is right behind, also being pushed out of the way. That's really disappointing. But look, Makawicki, I thought he might actually have to go into turn 1. He decided not to, but he's as close as I've seen him so far in this race.
Well, he's certainly very racy, and he's been that way since we've seen him in a Ford GT this year. And a step up from the Aston Martin that he enjoyed, and particularly in Argentina when they had that victory, the Hexas team. So putting pressure yet again. The trouble is, you saw when the Ford came into the pits and stopped the heat of the brakes, the rear disc brake, those are carbon fibre brakes, and it caught fire. Imagine the temperature that are on the brakes of these cars. Okay, they're getting the benefit of some cooling, but they're not very far short of the temperature of the ones that caught fire.
No, that's right. While they're still going, it's probably a good thing, but coming in hot like that, you see the difference. Great onboard shot this as you wind your way through the wooded area of this Zolder circuit.
Lost a little bit there, got a little bit of understeer getting close to the rear wing of the Corvette. So that's something that Makawicki's got to think about. He knows that he can get under the rear wing of the Corvette, but he has to do it at a point on the track where he can take advantage of it. And he lost that traction just coming through the exit of turn 11.
Yeah, down towards the final chicane, the Jackie X chicane here. In a little while, they'll be heading down that pit lane, but we're still 7 minutes away from pit lane opening up. Bit of oversteer. Fred having to give it a big old corrective dab of opposite lock there. Not close enough, certainly, to attack into turn 1. And Marcus Winkelhock still holding on to third in the Lamborghini, then Enger, then Peter Cox in the black Lamborghini, and then chased by Piccini, then Krum, and Braverman, and off. That's the third place car, has dropped to fourth. He's got back on. Winkelhock has lost a place to Enger.
Made a mistake coming out of the exit of turn 1, opened the door for Thomas Enger. Thomas doesn't need to be asked twice. He took it, and now he can do what he knows he's capable of doing. Watch again, now the back end stepped out. That's what happened. Car goes off the track onto the gravel. Thomas Enger drives past, says, "Thank you very much, Marcus. Easy peasy, and I'll take that from you any day of the week." There's the back end losing control, losing just under acceleration out of turn 1. Just said, "I've had enough." The Michelin couldn't cope with the 600 and whatever horsepower the Lamborghini produces.
There's his teammate and team manager at the team, Mark Basseng, and that must have been a nervous moment for them. They lost one car at that corner. Look how close the two leaders are now, though, as Nick Katzberg in the Corvette really having to think about this, because Makawicki breathing all over him, and as they come down towards the top corner, now called Ria, this corner, there's no chance just yet, but he is looking for every possibility.
It is possible to overtake into turn 12. They call it Ria because that's right, did it in 1982 and took the lead of the Grand Prix.
On a certain Mr. Alan Jones, I believe, John.
No, it was a certain Mr. Keke Rosberg.
Ah, yes, Keke Rosberg. Right, okay.
Look how close now, under the rear wing of the Corvette.
Let's see whether he can attack into turn one. He is as close as we've seen on this section of circuit. Can he pick up the slipstream and go for it? Has a look down the inside. He's not really going for it, though. He's still just keeping the pressure on young Katzberg.
But he did the right thing. He realised he wasn't sufficiently alongside the Corvette to take the corner, so he got out of it early enough to enable the Corvette to swing across the front of the Ford. Mike Hazeman's saying, oh, thank goodness that Fred McAvicky wasn't so feisty that he just wanted to make a point.
Where's the smile, Mike? You were smiling earlier. You weren't smiling that time. It was all getting a little bit hairy. But there's still a few minutes to go before the pit window opens up and Mike Hazeman takes over the lead car. And McAvicky wants to try and be in front by the time they hand over.
I think I think that Mike Hazeman should be getting himself ready because it isn't that long. And I wonder who will be the first of these two lead cars to dive into the pits as the Ford again closes up under braking. Again, using a lot of the curb on the inside. Need to be careful that you don't go beyond what the marshals, the stewards think is acceptable.
Yep, looking okay for the moment, and Katzberg doing a fine job of just doing enough to stay in front of this Ford at the moment as we come up to that same corner, the top corner at the top of the straight, back of the end of the circuit if you like, but a bit of work still from McAvicky to keep the car under control.
The Corvette right now looks the easier of the two cars for the respective drivers. Fred McAvicky's having to push very hard, and in doing so he's forcing the back again just to give way under acceleration, again under the rear wing of the Corvette. But we saw the Corvette's got the Mumba when it counts, can out-drag the Ford down, but does the Ford can look down the inside? Wisely again waits.
Yeah, there is still plenty of time in this race. It is not worth getting into a situation as we saw, a little look there, but not worth getting into the situation we saw from the two front row cars that made contact at the start of this race. And anyone would think it was a Formula Ford race. It's still a 1 hour race. You've still got to deal with the pit stops. And McAvicky, I'm sure, applying as much pressure as he can, but still conscious of keeping this car here in one piece. You ride back on board with the V8 powered Ford GT. And you've got to wonder how the tyre wear is affecting these two cars. They'll get a new set of boots at the pit stop, so they're sort of getting towards the end of their time, the tyres. But both cars seem to be handling, as you say, if anything, it's McAvicky who's been struggling with oversteer more than Katzberg.
Well, he's been trying to force the issue, and therefore he's been getting on the throttle a little bit earlier, maybe at a point when the tyre hasn't got sufficient grip. Again, right under the rear wing. He is going to have a look down into turn 12 at this lap. I'm absolutely certain. Watch for the Ford. Is he going to come out alongside? Not close enough this time.
Not quite there, is he? So he does tuck in behind. Still no mistakes from Katzberg. Big, powerful cars, these. A little bit too much gas too soon in the corner. The back end will step out. But we haven't seen Katzberg make any mistakes like that so far. And they're going to continue around for at least another lap. Well, what happened in the incident between the two yellow cars earlier? Let's go and find out. Haley's with Martin Matzke.
Martin, that was an unfortunate incident for the team. Whose fault would you say that was?
There was a long fight between me and Vanina. Finally, it was finished. I was finished, but I think it was no mistake from the both side. We just racing and this happened. So I think it was just a racing incident.
Thank you.
Well, it'll be interesting to get the other side of that story. I hope we get to talk to Vanina later. Meanwhile, that was almost a big attempt there from Fred McAvicky. Didn't quite come off.
It was the most successful attempt to date. It didn't come off, but it certainly gave Nicky Katzberg the reality that the Ford is not here just to finish second, as we're getting closer yet again to that mandatory pit stop.
Yeah, still in third place is the Aston Martin of Thomas Enger. Behind him, Marcus Wicklock, who recovered from that trip through the edge of the gravel and was okay. Let's just take another look here at this attempt by McAvicky, John.
Yeah, I mean, he's almost in position, but the Corvette again on the right hand side of the track is able to sweep across, carries more speed at the entry to the corner than the Ford would have been able to have done. But it was I think that Nicky Katzberg would have thought, well, that's as close as I want this car behind me to get, and I have to be aware that I'm under pressure every corner of this lap.
So up through the gears goes Makovic from first, right up at the end of the track there. He's up to 5th gear before they're back on the brakes. Little slide from the Corvette. First time I've really seen it move at all. Bass Liners on the left, Mark Henrici on the right. Their race was run, I'm afraid, at the first corner. There we go. Torrid start to the season. Here we go then. Is this going to be another attempt from Makovic? He has a look down the inside again. It's not enough.
I tell you, you've got to be so careful, because once the Corvette commits to turn 1, there is no taking prisoner, and Makovic, if he pushes his nose another 5 or 6 feet down in the inside of turn 1, then there will be contact.
Yeah, the pit window will be open, I think, when they come around next time, John. So who will go first? Will they both come in at the same time? Mike Hazelman's, the smile is back on his face, but now it starts to get serious, because surely that pit stop's coming up pretty soon, and Makovic knows it and is still hounding the youngster.
But Mike Hazelman's co-driver Nicky Katzberg in the lead Corvette, he's enjoying it so much he hasn't even got his, but he's just got his helmet on now, got to get his gloves on. I would like to see a driver who's going to take over a car at the first opportunity to be ready maybe 5 minutes, not sitting there enjoying the race.
Look how close he is again to the back of that Corvette. Absolutely stunning cars these, but when these guys are behind the wheel, they race them as hard as anything. And Makovic, the 30-year-old Frenchman who impressed us on several occasions last year in the Hexis Aston Martin, is doing it again here in the Ford GT. He won the qualifying race last time, and he's squeezing once again.
I think what will happen is the Corvette will go into the pits, the Ford will stay out, try and maximise the switch over, the crossover time. Corvette doesn't go in, Ford doesn't go in, Aston goes in. Thomas Enger.
This could work well for Aston. Let's see what happens. Peter Cox is in, so is Andrea Piccini. Michael Crum is in, so is David Brabham, but staying out there is the Brazilian car Bernoldi, and the 2 leaders have stayed out. Now that is a surprise, as you say, but the Corvette may be trying to sort of trying to stop the Ford taking the advantage. Here comes Makovic. Oh, he's up the inside. That was lovely. And the Corvette went a bit wide and he was through.
And I thought there might have been a switchover coming through turn 2, but Fred Makovic has done what he's tried to do for what now 17 laps, and that is to get that Ford ahead of that Corvette, and he's done so. And if I was in the Ford team now, I would say come straight into the pits and let's do the driver change.
Now, can Hexis weave their magic once again? These guys were the fastest stoppers by a mile last time out in Abu Dhabi. Other teams are scratching their heads wondering how they do it. Well, we're watching at the moment. Only 2 mechanics on the job of changing the wheels, of course. Each driver helps the other out and in, and it looks as though they're almost ready to go. And away goes the number 4 Aston Martin, and that looked good once again.
Clean stop. We don't know the time, the in and out. We're looking to get some information as regarding the time it was when he came into the pit lane, the time when he left. Then we can make the calculation for you. Otherwise, we're going to have to wait for everybody to cycle through before we get the true picture. But is the Ford coming in? Is the Corvette coming in? The bulk of the field have gone into the pit lane 1 lap earlier than these lead 2 cars.
But Makovic's grabbed the lead. That's from his point of view the most important thing. Is he staying out there? Yes, but the Corvette is in. That has to be the right tactic from their point of view.
So which of these 2 teams is going to make the call, the correct call? Mike Hazelman's ready to take over from Nicky Katzberg, who really only up until the last lap was headed by anybody, and that's Fred Makovic, who stays out, goes and does another lap, I suspect, to try and get that clear air and hopefully make another 10th or 3/10 or even a second before he makes it. Even that small amount of time can be vital when it comes to the pit stop and getting back out.
So Nick gets out, Mike gets on board. The other two, the 2 mechanics are hard at work, getting each wheel changed, rushing around. Those are big, heavy wheels. The ones coming off are very hot as well, of course. Mike Hazelman safely on board. Belts are done up. 1 more wheel to go to send him on his way. Remember, the Ford has stayed out there. Away goes. Hazelman's looked pretty good, didn't it? And away it goes.
Yeah, it's another clean stop. We don't know, again, the actual time of that stop or the in and the out time. That's the key.
The other Hexis car is in, by the way, and this is the car that managed to make up so much ground in Abu Dhabi. I wonder if they can do the same for the number 3 car, as Piccioni now will be taking over that car. Away it goes, and tyre smoke billowing as it gets on its way.
So a Corvette takes all that time to get down the pit lane. Of course, the Aston that we saw Piccioni jump on board, he is at the pit lane exit. Nicky Katzberg done a great job for the Corvette team.
Yeah, really nice job there indeed. Now, there you can see that Christian Hohenadel in the number 4 Aston Martin, close behind the Corvette there of Mike Hazelman. So again, the Hexis stop was very quick, and it's got them out with the Corvette. So very impressive stuff. And Christian Hohenadel did a mighty job in qualifying. only in his second ever GT1 event, and he's putting the pressure on Hazeman.
He certainly is, and Hazeman, of course, knows this place better than any human being. Down the inside, no. Hazeman knows where to place his car, knows how to deny the Aston Martin the opportunity of getting caught out as the two Lamborghinis, and is it the second of the Aston Martins, the Thomas Enger car, of course, now being driven by Alex Muller.
Yeah, absolutely, and Hohenadel still putting a lot of pressure here on the back of the Corvette. Now this could be vital for a podium finish in this race, but of course we've still got to wait and see what happens to the Ford of Fred Makovicky. It's not come into the pits yet, the Ford. Here comes Hohenadel again, looking one way, then the other. Can't find a way through as yet, but the reigning GT3 champion, Christian Hohenadel, must be loving this, and he's putting one of the most experienced drivers in Hazeman's under pressure here. Can he get a run on him down towards turn one? The V12 Aston Martin down the inside of the V8 Corvette, but the Corvette just turns in front.
Well, Mike Hazeman's canny as his father was, Twan Hazeman, and he now denies the Aston. Again, the Aston not able to get the opportunity, was simply going down the inside. You've got to slow down, sit on the car on the outside.
Still out there, John. Interestingly, the other Ford has not come in yet. Fred Makovicky still stays out there.
Doing 1 minute 31.1 on his last lap. And anybody who's been back out his match.
Possible change here between the Corvette and the Aston.
He's got it.
He's done it down the inside into the chicane, and Christian Hohenadel gets past that Corvette. That's a crucial manoeuvre.
Great overtake, did a good job on the engine of turn 4, got the drive, got the Aston up alongside. On the inside on this occasion, going into a chicane, the inside works. Into an open corner like turn 1, much more difficult.
So away they go once again, and Hohenadel now trying to make the most of the pace of the Hexis Aston Martin on this new set of tyres. Hazeman doesn't seem to have the pace that the Aston Martin has, so how is this going to settle down? We're still waiting for that Ford of Makovicky to come in and make its pit stop.
Doing a 1:30.7, so that car, Makovicky, trying, there he is, to build up a lead. He's got clear air, he knows he can run at his own pace, he knows he's got a quick car. He's done the quickest lap of the race, in fact, no, so 1:29.7 on lap 3.
Yeah. Earlier on, that was the number 38 car, Marcus Winkelhock, who got that. Let's just take a look on board then with Makovicky. Surely he's going to be coming in this lap, because otherwise, if they... Oh, he gets a bit of oversteer there, big slide, as those rear tyres are saying, I've done enough work, let's get in and change, because we want some new tyres on this car. Well, it could be now. Watch him as he comes down. Does he go straight on? Yes, he does.
So has he done enough work? The question is, the last lap was 1:30.7. The lap previous was in the 31s. So it's a question of whether on the 3-4 laps that he's decided not to come into the pits on, has he had enough opportunity to build up maybe an extra second or 2 seconds, so that when they do their pit stop, they've got that little bit of comfort zone.
Yeah, and the car he's going to be battling with is the Aston Martin of Christian Hohenadel, the Hexis car that had a great pit stop, as you saw, and got past the Corvette out on track. It will be that car that this one is racing against. So Makovicky will hand over to Max Martin, who jumps aboard.
I tell you what, the way he swung open the door, it bounced off his hinges. There is the Aston Martin. So it's going to be a very tight call. It looks to me like the Aston Martin has got the ability. I mean, it's going to be, the Aston, for me, has got to take the lead of this race.
Well, let's wait and see. They're down at the end of the pits, these guys, so they don't have to run all the way through the pit lane. They've done that bit already, so once they get going, they're almost out of the pit lane speed limit immediately. Then they've got that left-hander that leads onto the track itself. I don't think it's a good enough stop, though.
No way at all. That Aston Martin has eaten them up and spat them out and has taken the lead. There's the Ford. It's going to take it 15 seconds virtually to get from there back, or 10 seconds anyway, to get back onto the racetrack, and the first and second cars have gone through, the third car's gone through, the fourth car's gone through, fifth car's gone through, sixth car's gone through, seventh
finally.
Well, I mean, what a disappointment.
Yeah, so
what a disappointment.
From leading this race, having earned the lead in the first section of the race, now they find themselves down in seventh, and it is all change. And once again, the Hexis racing team and its superb pit stops are telling the story here, because Christian Hohenadel is now leading in the number 4 Aston Martin. You're on board with Max Martin, has just taken over from Makovicky, but it is not good news from their point of view. We're going to have to see Max put on a real charge here if he's going to gain a few more places back. There's the first car then, the Aston, leading from the Corvette in second place. In third position, Marc Basseng and the Lamborghini. Then it's Alex Muller, having taken over from Thomas Enger, and then Carl Van Wendlinger under some pressure from Jamie Campbell-Walter. And look at this, Martin's got some pressure on him here from the other Nissan, and that's making life pretty difficult for him.
Well, indeed, Fred Makavicki in the pits, looking up at the screen, not happy at all. His car is under challenge. It's dropped to 6th when it's going to have pressure. Oh, it locks up and the Aston's gone through and taken 6th place away.
It's Piccioni, rather, in the Aston there that's got past. So Piccioni gains a place and Martin's going to lose another place. And Ricardo Zolder, it's all gone wrong for the Ford.
It's as if just the whole rhythm of the pit stop upset the rhythm of the driver. He just suddenly had to defend one side, then the other side, on, of course, tyres that are not preheated. So therefore he's taking time to get back up to speed, and 2 places lost, and in addition to the 5 that were lost in the pit stop, that's about as bad as it gets. 7 places in the space of 1 lap.
Miserable. 9th now, that car. So that is absolutely miserable for Max Martin and Fred Makavicki. And, well, whether they're going to be able to fight back at all, it doesn't look very promising at the moment, does it? The pit window is now closed. Everybody has made their pit stop. So let's run you through the order very quickly. It is the Aston Martin, the Hexis car of Christian Hohenadel, the reigning GT3 champion, along with Andrea Piccini in this car. There it is, number 4, that leads the race by 1.8 seconds. Having got past the Corvette, that was a crucial manoeuvre. Mike Hasemans runs in 2nd place in the red Corvette. 3rd place, Marc Basseng in the Lamborghini. Then it's Alex Muller in the Aston Martin, chased by Carl Windlinger and Jamie Campbell-Walter, the first of the Nissans. Clivia Piccioni next up from Ricardo Zonta. There's Max Martin in 9th place. In 10th place, I can tell you, it's Lucas Luhr in another Nissan. Max Nielsen is running 11th in the Lamborghini. 12th is the Corvette of Michael Rossi. And then further down, we, of course, have got those cars that went out earlier on in this race, the 2 Belgian Racing Fords. We lost Stefan Mucker, we lost Richard Westbrook, we also lost the Poulsen and Nicky Pastorelli, and we lost Bas Linders right at the first turn. So a number of cars, I'm afraid, not going to finish this one as the leaders come across the line, just under 24 minutes to go.
Well, catch your breath, and I just wonder what happened to the Ford, that pit stop. How could they get it so wrong? I think they did the right thing by staying out and enjoying that clear air. Wait to see what happens when Maxime Martin comes past on his first clear flying lap to get a time. It's a middle 1:31, and that's over a second slower than the lead Aston Martin. So I just wondered, did Fred Makavicki and that Ford just hammer the car so hard that the brakes, by the time they went back out again, there's a different car for Maxime Martin to the one that he remembered from qualifying earlier today.
Closest battle there is the one you were just watching between Carl Wendlinger and Jamie Campbell-Walter. But let's see if we can find out something about what went wrong down there. Fred Makavicki is with Haley.
Fred, after taking advantage of that first corner, Maxime is now fighting his way through the pack. It's got to be disappointing for you after all your hard work.
Yeah, sure. After a good start, I can find a little hole. I exit the second of the start. After, I can pass the leader and I can push a little bit during 2 or 3 laps to do a gap. But we have a problem doing the pit stop with the gun, and we exit at the 7th place. It's a little bit hard for us, but the race is not finished, and we have again tomorrow.
Thank you.
Well, Fred, sensible there. You've got to look towards the championship race in this form of racing, but even so, it's got to be bitterly disappointing.
I mean, simply, he's gutted. He did a great job, he worked hard, he harried the Corvette all the way, got ahead of the Corvette, stayed out, did the extra laps in the clear air, handed the car over to the teammate, and in the process there was a problem in the pit stop, and then of course Maxime Martin, when he went back out, he got literally mugged, that's the only word I can use, mugged by 2 other competitors who were on a racing lap, whereas the Ford was just on its out lap.
On board with Jamie Campbell-Walter here, the number 21 Nissan. Top Nissan in the race now after problems. So, well, obviously Westbrook got caught out in the incident at the first corner, and he and Dunbrecker now sitting and watching this. So Jamie Campbell-Walter sharing the car with David Brabham. They're currently running 6th, but still close to the back of that Lamborghini of Carl Wendlinger, and Wendlinger still sort of finding his feet with the Lambo because it's only the second event he's contested in the Swiss Racing entered car. They've switched from Nissan, of course, themselves, so he knows the strengths of that car that's following him because he was driving the Swiss Racing version last year, and Carl Wendlinger, as wily as they come, he's not going to make it easy for Jamie Campbell-Walter to get past, and you're now on board with Carl Wendlinger in the car just ahead.
You know, there's a sort of perverse pleasure being the hunter, and sometimes when you're the hunted you always feel slightly like, am I going to watch my mirror or am I going to ignore it? I always enjoyed the hunting because you can put pressure on that car and you can almost play with the driver's mind by doing so, moving your car around, trying to get the driver to use his mirrors. once you get a driver looking in the mirrors and thinking about what's happening behind, normally you get a chance then to do something about it.
Interestingly, amongst the leaders, we're just looking back at Maxime Martin down in 8th position he is at the moment. The leader there, the gap has not really grown at all. In fact, on that last lap, the Hazeman's Corvette was some 6/10 faster, so the gap came down slightly first to second, and then third place, you can see there is Marc Basseng, he's closer, but actually of those cars on the previous lap, it was the Aston of Alex Muller who was fastest. This time, this lap, well, he's about the same as the others, but I can see those top 4 getting a bit closer to one another.
Well, as long as they can get clear air and do what they want to do. There's a distraction going on here further with Wendlinger, still with Jamie Campbell-Walter trying to get another position to take that away from the Lamborghini, but the top 4, the gap between the top 4 is in fact 3.5 seconds.
Yeah, it has closed up a little bit. There's Peter Cox, who jumped out of the Wendlinger Lamborghini earlier. David Brabham, of course, who jumped out of the Jamie Campbell-Walter Nissan. They're looking at 6th place here. Certainly a much better start to their weekend than it was last time out in Abu Dhabi, but that is the contest that is closest at this stage. It is for 5th place. Wendlinger there in the number 5 car, suitably enough for Jamie Campbell-Walter, still daring dabble in. Both former FIA GT champions and both know exactly what the game is. But look at this, Marc Basseng has really closed up to the back of the Corvette and Mike Hazeman, and now we've got a race for 2nd place as well.
And Aston just getting a marginal breathing moment, well, it's 1 second literally, but the Lamborghini right over the back of Mike Hazeman coming into turn 1. Again, the issue is trying to dive down the inside. If you haven't got your car alongside, you've got to find a way to get out of the way of the car you're trying to pass.
On board with Marc Basseng, we saw Marcus Winkelhock in the car earlier when he made that little error which lost him 3rd place, but they've got it back through the pit stops and now definitely attacking for 2nd.
Is that a sat-nav set on the dash just above the 2 I don't know, I mean...
It's a rear view mirror, in fact, so that's how he gets his view of what's behind.
I prefer sat-nav myself.
So Marc Basseng, who is, remember, team manager for this team, is a young team because it was only set up year before last specifically for the GT1 World Championship, and Marc was asked by René Munich to actually run the team. He never really thought of running a team in the past. He's always been a professional driver, but he took the option and really enjoying it, despite it making his weekends very busy. Now, Michael Rossi in the number 47 Corvette, putting Max Nielsen under pressure. This is further back.
Oh, and he made a big error coming out of turn 16. The back end of the Corvette snapped out. He had opposite lock on, and of course the car then turned sharp left over the grass. Bump, bump, bump. And that's released all the pressure from the back of that particular Lamborghini. Down the inside.
That's for 2nd. Oh, that was so close for 2nd place there. Marc Basseng almost getting alongside the Corvette, and he nearly did it into the final chicane that time. Look how close he still is on the run down towards G1. Is there going to be another a go? No, he's just slots in behind Mike Hazeman. Oh, nervous moments down there in the Al Inkel pit. There's Marcus Winkelhock, who had a pretty exciting first stint, and now he's watching his teammate having an exciting 2nd one.
I think that would have caught us attention because that was as close as we've seen Marc Basseng get to the back of Mike Hazeman's in the Corvette. Hazeman's, Ben, you pointed out to me, he's done 3 24-hour races around here. I can't imagine doing, well, they're doing a 1-hour race. I mean, it is such a busy little racetrack. You've got no time to catch your breath. You're on the brakes, you're off the brakes, the car's turning. It really gives a car a workout.
Yeah, and a driver workout, as you say. Yeah, he's won 3 of those 24-hour races. I'm sure he's done plenty more, in fact, over his years, Mike Hazeman. And at the moment, he's doing enough to keep Marc Basseng behind him. But this is a special circuit for Basseng. It's where he first ever drove a racing car. He won a competition, in fact, got selected as a final group to come here to Zolder, and then he was one of 2 drivers who were selected who got a chance to go circuit racing. So he loves this place. First car he ever drove around this track was his mum's BMW M3. I think a bit of extra practice before he did that competition, but now he's putting the pressure on the 2nd place Corvette.
She sounds like she's a yummy mummy, doesn't she?
So it's still a great tussle going on for 2nd position, the Corvette and the Lambo. But don't forget, the Aston behind them might be able to catch up, I think. Alex Muller's been putting in some good laps.
Oh, look, the Lamborghini going right out to the right to try and get Mike Hazeman to defend, therefore to make the cut back down the inside, but not yet close enough to do. But it's an interesting manoeuvre. Basseng having to control the back of the Lamborghini on the exit of turn 1. But clearly he's thinking, and look at the understeer going into turn 2. That's a problem for the Lamborghini further on the circuit, especially coming through turn 11. which is a key corner because turn 12 offers up overtaking opportunities.
That was the problem they had yesterday. He said a bit of understeer through those corners, and you could see it there, as you say, John. Although that oversteer through turn 1 was a little bit like the bit that Winkelhock suffered from earlier on.
Yeah, that's more, I think, induced by your right foot, but it's the understeer, and that's the fundamental problem with this circuit. The predominance of corners are to the right, so the left front in your car gets a hammering, and eventually it can only provide a certain level of grip if you ask it for more. Now just watch, if you get a look at the Lamborghini coming through turn 11 now and see the steering angle, if you can get an idea. We saw from the onboard shot how much steering angle Bessing had to put into the Lamborghini, and again just falls back a little bit. They're closing back up to Hullenadel in the Aston Martin. Suddenly that 31.0 has get a 30.9 for the second and third, so tenth of a second difference between second and third and the lead car.
And the fourth car as well, because Muller, again on that last lap of the leaders, was the quickest, so he's catching the top three. So we really are hotting up beautifully in the final 15 minutes of this race. The qualifying race at Zolder, still being led by Christian Hohenadel, chased by Mike Hazemans and then Marc Basseng. This number 38 car has been having a very exciting race so far. Let's go to the man who was in it earlier, Marcus Winkelhock, talking to Haley.
Marcus, the question is, will Marc be able to intimidate Mike enough to take him?
I don't hope that he's going too much risk. I think third position would be great for us. Coming from 12th position in the qualifying, I think P3 would be a great result for the first race, and would be a good position for the second race, for the main race. So I hope that he stays calm. I think P3 is better than nothing.
Thank you.
So let's see what happens. Will he stay calm, or will he go on the attack? Marc Basseng on board with him still in third place, not as close this time, certainly not close enough to attack, as Hohenadel maintains that advantage still over the Corvette of Hazemans. There we are, there's the Lamborghini, and after the performance of their teammates to take pole position, they were a little bit low after qualifying. They picked up a 3-place penalty on the grid, as did 6 cars, because they hadn't slowed down enough under yellow flags in free practice. Well, Winkelhock certainly picked his way through the chaos at the first corner, and that is what has helped earn them this position.
And the fourth of the 4 cars, Alex Müller, just gradually, little bit by little bit, easing his way up to the back of the Lamborghini, and then joining into what will be, hopefully very shortly, with 13.5 minutes remaining, a 4-way battle.
Yeah, that would be great fun. And Wendlinger still holding on to 5th, by the way, in his Lamborghini. And then you've got the first of the Nissans, and that is Jamie Campbell-Walter in the background. So the Nissans not having quite the run they were hoping for, but still in the hunt there. On board the second-place car then, the Corvette, as Mike Hazeman continues on his way, and still no sign of him getting close enough to Hohenadel, who had the gap. The gap was down to under half a second as they crossed the line, although the Corvette looks a little further to me behind that as they go through turn 4.
Yeah, there's an equidistance almost between the first 4 cars, and again I suspect that each of the 3 drivers behind the lead car are just sort of drawing breath, trying to put themselves into a position to once again pick up the momentum, to try and take them, carry them forward, to get close enough to the car that they were following, and hopefully somewhere around the track, maybe into turn 12 or into turn 1 at the end of the pit straight, possibly into turn 2. That's when we saw the lead taken by Makovic from Nicky in the Corvette just before the pit stops.
Yeah, that's right. So let's see whether there will be any change. 12.5 minutes to go then. Still Hohenadel is the race leader. Remember, he is new to GT1 World Championship, but he is the reigning GT3 champion. But he has a lot to learn in terms of these cars. They are very different to the GT3 cars, and he was getting his head around it last time in Abu Dhabi. He obviously loves this Zolder circuit because he's been fast here all weekend, but he's not going to have it all his own way. Look again, these guys are ganging up on him.
Yeah, a GT1 car is much more of what I would describe as a pure racing car, where the GT3 is still, there's an element of stock about it rather than an out-and-out GT1 car.
That's right, yes, and also there are some driving aids still allowed in GT3 under the rules there, whereas there are no driving aids obviously allowed in GT1. It's all down to the driver himself, but Hohenadel doing enough at the moment. Again, that lap, just certainly through turns 1 and 2 and 3, he always seems to pull out a little bit, then they seem to catch him on the back part of the circuit.
Well, it's all a bit swingy and roundabouty as they make their way around the lap again, looking at the Lamborghini.
And the Aston behind.
The Aston slowly just been Alex Müller positioning himself, watching what's going on. He thinks that at some point, with just 11 minutes remaining, there may well still be a do-or-die effort from one of the cars in second or third place, and that will open up his opportunities without even having to do anything that puts him or the car at risk.
Yeah, this new driver pairing of Alex Müller and Thomas Enger. Alex moving over from a Maserati that he was driving last year. He's a very intense, very competitive individual. Is Alex, you can see it in him. He's always very focused on trying to get those results. But he and Thomas went into this race basically just wanting a good starting position for the championship race, and that's what they've got if they stay even where they are now. It would be a second row start for the championship race. That's where the big points are on offer. I think they will be happy with that. There is a bit of damage on that car. They did get a hit at the first corner, but at the moment they're doing okay. Now Christian Hohenadel still leading, but not by very much. Gap down to 0.3 of a second. Andrea Piccini, who was driving this car earlier, he must be getting a little bit nervous now, John.
I think anybody in the pit lane who's stepped out of the car, particularly in the lead cars, is wondering, just with 10 minutes to go, are we going to retain positions if you're leading, or if you're second, third or fourth, are you going to make a position?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I wonder how Andrea Piccini is feeling, watching his teammate Hohenadel leading this race. Great pit stop again from the guys. Let's go and hear from Andrea talking to Haley.
Andrea, is it due to the tyres that Christian seems to be dropping back?
We have a little bit of tyre wear, I think more than the Corvette and more than the Lambo. Even at the end of my stint we had a little bit of problem with the tyre wear, so I really hope he can hold the others back. It's not easy to pass here, so I cross my finger. I think he can make it, because up to now he did a fantastic job.
Thank you.
Well, we saw the Hex's car do this in Abu Dhabi when it was the championship race, fending off Richard Westbrook, but that was the other driver, of course, Stef Dusseldorf.
Well, less than 10 minutes and the pressure is mounting once again. Mark Bessing in third place, Mike Hazeman's in second place, and if there is a problem with the Aston Martin, I've no doubt that somebody in that those two respective teams will have been listening to the broadcast and heard that maybe Aston are suffering a little bit of tyre wear or tyre degradation, and that just will give impetus to the following two cars.
Yeah, and I tell you, Mark Basseng in third is very close to the back of that Corvette as they pass our commentary position. You can see that the Corvette had to go a bit defensive there. Basseng might have a little bit go into turn two. Is he close enough here? You can sometimes dive down the inside, but he's it's tight. It's tight. The Corvette's wide. Hazeman gives him room. He's trying to sneak on the inside. Surely he's done it.
Yes,
Mark
he did.
Basseng is in second.
Well worked out. We saw that coming into turn one, that the Corvette went one way. Mark Basseng read it very well and then dived on the inside. Mike Hazeman's actually wasn't quite clear. Now we've got the Aston. Alex Müller going to give the Corvette a workout, and he's on the long side, but he's on the wrong side coming into the chicane.
Hazeman sensibly goes to the middle of the road so that the Aston doesn't get such a clear run, but now he's got his work cut out to hold on to a podium finish here. He's been beaten a second, and now he's got Alex Müller breathing all over him. The Corvette just there in third place from the Aston Martin, and the Lamborghini of Wendlinger catching.
Well, waiting to see what's going to happen to Mark Bessing, now in second place, putting a gap on the Corvette, looking to run down the lead Aston Martin. 7 minutes and 45 seconds to go.
This is great stuff in the GT1 World Championship. This is the sort of racing we want to see in supercars, and they're being pushed away. The number 21 Nissan of Jamie Campbell-Walter. What has happened to that car? It was running in 6th place, but for some reason it's out, and that means that Maxime Martin in the Ford that lost so much time on the pit stops will have moved up to 6th. But look at this battle now for the lead of the race. Here comes Mark Basseng on the attack.
Aston Martin has to go defensive down the inside. It's not the quickest entry to the corner, but it's the way of defending the corner. But watch for the Lamborghini. It was so strong here one lap ago with the Corvette. Can he dive down the inside? He has. He's alongside.
He's there, I think, but is it enough? No, it's not. And the Aston Martin is just able to squeak in front again. Oh, and Basseng had to back out of that.
But sensibly, he allowed the Aston Martin. It wasn't quite so much cooperation. We saw Mike Hazeman's a few laps ago allow the Lamborghini to get through. Marcus Winkelhock, he's a happy camper, but you can see the pressure from the Lamborghini on the Aston Martin, and I suspect if there's another attack, it's got to come in that part of the racetrack or into turn 12, and that's the more difficult of the two.
Hohenadel kicking up the dust as he came out of the short chicane, down the hill into the Villeneuve chicane now, and still Basseng, who dropped back as a result of that attempt just for a moment, but he's still got a little bit of time. 6.5 minutes remain, so it could still change here. In the background, Hazeman still holding on to third in the Corvette from Alex Müller fourth, Wendlinger fifth. Martin now 6th. Clinia Piccioni in the other Hexis Aston up to 7th place now as a result of Jamie Campbell-Walter's demise. Lucas Luhr is now the top Nissan in 8th place, ahead of Max Nielsen, and 10th place is being held by Michael Rossi.
So this is the quickest car on the racetrack. That's the one you're looking at, the Lamborghini of Mark Bessing, lapping a 1:30 against the 31.2 of the lead Aston Martin. Back onto the pit straight. 5 minutes and 45 seconds as they come across the start-finish line. No attempt this time into turn 1, and I would doubt any attempt into turn 2. Certainly for this lap, he's going to gather his strength and make one more surge and try and put the Aston under pressure and win this race.
If he can, but don't forget, it's still all about being in a group grid position for the championship race as well. And this would mean a front row start for the number 38 car, so they don't want to throw that away. Changes up into 5th, up into 6th gear briefly up this backstretch before punching his way down through the gears, literally the gear lever being chucked down to 2nd gear through that chicane, and then back up the hill once again.
Well, in fact, that last lap from the Lamborghini in 2nd place was fractionally slower than the lap time for the lead Aston Martin. Again, for me, that's just the driver backing off again now under the rear of the Aston Martin, coming out of the Villeneuve chicane into turn 11, and the run up the hill and then down into turn 12.
So has the mid-engined Lamborghini looked after its tyres and brakes a little more than the front-engined Aston Martin? That's the big question. And look again, Basseng has a lot of mid-corner speed there and closes the gap a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, clearly there's more speed from the Lamborghini in those low-speed corners. Again, into the chicane, goes down the outside. Now, there's that an error of driving. I think he overran the corner, made the mistake, got onto the dirty part of the racetrack, but can he come back? He has! He's passed and something's broken on the Aston.
Yeah, the Aston's in trouble, and Basseng takes the lead, and poor Christian Hohenadel, who's driven so beautifully in the Hexis racing car. Look at the despair down there in Hexis racing. What has gone wrong? I didn't see him clout any curbs or hit anything.
Well, we saw Stefan Buka have a problem much earlier in the race. Similar looking problem. We thought that was due to contact on the first lap into the first corner, but clearly something on the rear of the Aston has gone into the final turn, and poor Christian Hohenadel has done a great job, but all for nothing.
That is a great pity for the Hexis team after their brilliant pit stop. Good drive from the reigning GT3 champion, but we have a new leader. It is Mark Basseng in the Lamborghini, the Alincourt.com car. Well, they had a podium finish in the championship race with that car just 2 weeks ago, and now they could be on for a qualifying race victory as well. There in second is the Corvette of Hazeman, still under pressure from Alex Muller in that Aston. But you've got to think, are the Astons okay? There's obviously been a problem with the Hexis car. There's been a problem on Mucker's, although we know that got hit hard by the other Lamborghini earlier.
There are 2 Astons now behind the barrier. Question is, for me, is Alex Miller in the Aston in 3rd place? Is his car working? Is he going to suffer a similar problem, or are these just, I should say, 2 one-offs, so that makes sense. Let's give it a kick. Go on, give it a good kick, because obviously you're entitled. Now that might be contact with another car. We didn't see it, but it is white, and was it here? Was the contact here? There may have. Oh, there was indeed. That's why.
Very
the damage to the right rear corner. And
My
you
goodness.
can see the right wheel suddenly toes in a bunch. So the Astons clearly are fragile. The tooling on the rear of Muka's car, the tooling on the rear of Hohenadel's car, clearly a problem there. It is coming out. That's the repeat of what happened just a lap ago.
Well, I'm really surprised. Contact like that does not normally lead to suspension damage, but it just goes to show, and as you say, that might be the Achilles heel on the Aston Martin, and so disappointing for Christian Hohenadel. A bit of a touch, and that right rear, as you say, pointing inwards, towing in, and there. Oh, now it's interesting because actually it looked as though Basseng got a little bit weavy under braking, didn't it?
Yeah, but he went down the outside of the track and he got, I think, just to the edge of where it was dirty. I mean, that was, I think, fair. There was no intent there to bang into another car, but they did make contact. Clearly it was at the worst possible point on the rear of the Aston, and the 2 links on those cars, or whatever rear part of the suspension it is, had it hit it at this most frangible place, and there's only virtually no damage to the Lamborghini and looked to be precious little to the Aston, but that proved not to be the case.
Wendlinger, meanwhile, has got the Lamborghini going well. There he is, still running in 4th place now with the demise of that Hexis Aston. So 4th place for Wendlinger, and he's scenting a possible podium finish here in this qualifying race, and he's caught up to the back of Alex Muller. The back end of that car just sliding normally as the rear tyres are going off. Only a minute and a quarter to go, but what a disappointment for the Hexis team. Let's go and hear from them.
Christian, a disappointing early retirement for you. Can you explain what happened?
Yes, it was a pretty shame. I think we had a good race. My tires are really, really red out, so I tried to stay in the braking point to the last chicane. I stay in the inside, and the Lambo behind me was hitting my wheel, and the suspension is broken, so my back wheel. So I have to stop. It's a shame because I think the team did a very, very good job with the pit stop again, and Andrea did also a very good job, and it's really a shame. It's really a shame.
Thank you.
I mean, the contact there was almost of negligible weight.
Yeah.
There was no big slam, there was no driving into the car, it was just very, very light contact, and it certainly is the Achilles heel of the Aston Martin this weekend in Zolder.
So, a disappointment for the Hexis team, but it leads to what could be a very, very good result for Mark Basseng and Marcus Winkelhock. Well, they had that third place finish, which was a surprise, the podium finish last time out in Abu Dhabi. This team has never won a race, a qualifying race or a championship race, but it looks as though they are going to take their first victory. And not only that, it's their team manager and driver at the wheel as they do so. Mark Basseng is going to take victory here at Zolder. He wins it in the Alinkel.com Lamborghini. Second goes to Mike Hazelmans in the Corvette. Battle for third. Oh, that was so close. It was the Aston Martin of Alex Muller just ahead of Carl Wendlinger, who suddenly put a real spurt on at the end of the race. But he didn't quite get him on the line, and Alex Muller and Thomas Enger will celebrate third. But what a result for Marcus Winkelhock and Mark Basseng. For Basseng, victory at a circuit where his circuit racing career began.
Started on the 6th row of the grid. Their sister car got taken out in the first corner on the first lap. There we see Basseng taking the flag. Mike Hazelmans comes in second after a race where I'm sure he's feeling a bit punched forward and countersunk. Look how close it was. Well, it was a quarter of a second or less. But really, I mean...
And Martin, the other Ford there, John, was also in that battle.
In that mix, yes.
Yeah.
But, I mean, how could anybody anticipate, predict, starting on the 6th row of the grid, to take a victory when your sister car on pole position by half a second gets taken out in the first corner?
Well, it really has been a series of contrasting fortunes for this team so far, as you say, with that other car being so fast but apparently unable to score points, and this car not so fast in qualifying or having problems. They had gearbox problems in Abu Dhabi. They had a penalty yesterday after not slowing down enough under a yellow flag, which dropped them back on the grid, but they have come through, and that was an amazing achievement. That little bit of contact with the Aston Martin, which it just looked like a racing incident. The shock to us in a way is that such little contact would have put the Aston in so much trouble, but that's the way it goes. I'm sure they will look at that. I'm sure the race director Eduardo Freitas will look at it, but it certainly just looked like one of those things, didn't it?
I mean, that to me was little more than a normal racing incident. If there is intent, if somebody drives poorly and slams into you, then I would say then that driver should suffer a penalty. In this instance, they were side by side. In fact, the Aston had the better opportunity in the chicane, and just the two cars moved in unison. Very, very light, looked like to me, light contact, but it was sufficient. I mean, I am very surprised that the Aston has gotten a weakness at that point. I mean, clearly we saw it with earlier in the Mucker's car when that got damaged with the collision with the other Lamborghini. That was a bigger impact, but this hardly a touch of any consequence at all.
Yeah, so that's a surprise, and I'm sure something that they will be looking at. But coming into the pits then, the top three from that race. Well, what a battle for third it was, right across the line there, as Alex Muller just held on in the Aston Martin from Carl Wendlinger and Max Martin in the Ford, which has recovered well after their disastrous pit stop. If you remember, they dropped all the way down to 9th. They got back to 5th as a result of some problems for others, but nonetheless it's still an important 5th place. But take a moment to absorb this great result for the team, which had so many problems at last year when they were in competitive positions. New driver lineup, effectively, Basseng being joined by Marcus Winkelhock and putting behind him what was a very difficult season last year. Look at that. They make a very, very impressive lineup.
It's just another strong driver lineup in a field of increasingly strong driver lineups. You've got two strong Lamborghinis in the Al-Inkel team. We've got two maybe not quite so strong in the Swiss Racing team, but that's the nature of GT1. You're getting this quality of driver and team coming in, and it's producing phenomenal racing.
Now, was that a little complaint from Philippe Dumas, the team manager of the Hexis team, coming over there to Marc Basseng to say, what was that about? Well, I don't know, maybe when they've got cool heads and they review the video, maybe everyone will feel differently. We'll have to find out. Mike Hazelman's, John, he held on for that second place as a result of problems, of course, for the Aston, but he's still there.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether Nicky Katzberg didn't do a better job than Mike Hazelman. Mike Hazelman's the most experienced of the two drivers in their Corvette, and knowing the circuit so well, I thought maybe we'd have a real opportunity to take a victory here. But Nicky Katzberg did such a great job in the opening stint. Between those two drivers, again, a very fair and equal pairing.
And a relieved-looking Thomas Enger, putting behind him the disaster that was the start of the first race in Abu Dhabi.
He looks like a Burgermeister coming up with litres or steiners of, well, water in this case, to Alex Miller, and Alex Miller delighted to take that third place, though he probably didn't realise how close the Lamborghini was as they came across the line.
No, that's right, it was very tight at the end there. But that was the top Aston Martin in a race of changing fortunes for Aston. They had a car on the front row. That went around at the first corner with contact with the Lamborghini. Then, of course, it went out with damage in the end. We saw the Hohenadel Piccini car leading for a good part of that race. Then, slight contact with the other Lamborghini, which ended up with damage to the car. That's the Bas Linders Ford there being picked up. That went off at the first corner, caught up in somebody else's incident. What a race. Let's go and get some reaction now with our race winners.
Mark, congratulations, your first win for the team.
Yeah, it's incredible. After the last race with the first podium for the team, now the first win in the qualifying race, it was just amazing. The car was great. I could push all the time. Nice maneuver against Mike, a little bit unlucky with the Hexis car. But we won. Cool. Winning is everything.
Did you hit the Aston Martin?
Yeah, slightly. He was defending in the middle, and I was way later on the brakes, so I went on the outside, and he came back, so he touched a little bit. Unluckily, his steering rack broke, so sorry, but I think it was just race incident.
And Marcus, there was some tension in the garage there, but what a result for the team.
Yeah, it's a great result for us. As I said before, starting from P12 and then winning the race, I think it's a great result for me, for Mark, for the whole team. And it's a good position for the race tomorrow, and I'm really looking for tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thanks, Hayley. Well, the only thing is that every time an Al-Inkel car starts on pole position, something seems to go wrong, so I'm not sure they really want that pole for tomorrow.
Well, let's hope we get a cleaner start into turn one for the championship race than we did today.
So the Corvette finished in a fine second place. Let's go and hear from those guys now.
Congratulations, Mike. You fought hard out there, but now finally you're going to get some points.
Yeah, it was a pity that when I drove out of the pit, he told me there's no brakes. So, and then I went out of the pits, no brakes, and then the first lap, I had to put all the brakes to the rear. So we lost a little pace there, and then, yeah, I lost the second place, and then, yeah, finally still finished second, so I'm happy.
And Nicky, your first stint was just awesome. It was great. How did you find it out there?
Yeah, I was really lucky at the start. I mean, everybody crashed and I could drive to the first place. But in the end of my stint, my brakes were getting really bad, so I was happy to get out of the car and let Mike do the job. So I'm really happy with P2.
Thank you.
Yeah, big smiles on their faces there. It is a tough track on brakes, John. We were talking about that a little bit through the race commentary, and clearly their front brakes had problems.
Well, I think one of the problems is that you come into the pits on a hot lap and you're in the pits for over a minute. You get a lot of heat soak into those brakes. That's why you had no brakes when you went back out again.
Let's go now and hear from our third place finishers in the Aston Martin.
Alex, there was some racing out there. How did you find it?
It was great. I mean, the start was a little casino we had in the first turn. Luckily, Thomas managed to go around. He got a hit from the Nissan, I think. Steering wheel was not straight anymore, but we made it on 3, and I think we have a good base for tomorrow for the championship race.
And how do you feel the championship race could pan out for you tomorrow, Thomas?
Well, I think it's going to be difficult for us as some of the other cars as well. We were struggling a little bit of tires at the end of the stint, or I was. But if we can avoid all the troubles in first corner, which again we could have seen here as in Abu Dhabi, it was a bit of carnage. But luckily we got the way of it. And yeah, we made a good pit stop, we made a great run, and car is good to go for tomorrow's podium.
Thank you.
So yeah, very happy looking Thomas Enger. That's what he's after, a podium in the championship race tomorrow, which is of course worth plenty of points.
Well, he's always a happy chappy, and it brings a lot of enjoyment to the paddock in general, and always a pleasure to bump into Thomas and have a rant or whatever, a chat maybe, in his case, not a rant. He provides great entertainment, and I find him one of the most pleasant people in the paddock.
So the result of the qualifying race here, the Lamborghini taking victory for the first time for the team of Basseng and Winkelhock, but a strong performance from the Corvette sees Hazemans and Katzberg in second. The Aston Martin of Muller and Enger finished third ahead of the Lamborghini of Wendlinger and Cox. Then the Ford recovering a bit to fifth place of Martin and Makovicky. Clivio Piccioni, the Hexis car, was sixth ahead of the first of the Nissans. Then the Swiss Racing Lamborghini of Nielsen and Janak. The other Corvette finished in 9th, and in 10th place was the Hohenadel car. Although it didn't finish, it was still sort of classified in 10th. But a lot of non-finishers. We never found out what happened to Campbell Walter, but something went wrong on the car. Ricardo Zolder and Enrique Bernoldi out as well. Both of the Belgian racing cars out after making contact with each other. And then, of course, cars that went off in that first corner incident that were involved there, unfortunately, including the pole-winning car of Schwager and Pastorelli. So an entertaining first race of the weekend, and the teams now have a bit of time. They've got this evening, overnight, and then they're not racing again until Sunday afternoon, so plenty of time to refettle the cars.
I think a lot of midnight oil down on the young Aston Martin team, because they'll have to find a reason why those two failures after contact, I'm surprised that they failed so easily.
This is the start again, John. We're trying to sort of pick up the initial contact here as Lamborghini and Aston went in side by side, and then there was slight contact, and then everyone else is trying to avoid.
Well, you could just catch it as the camera shot switches from looking into the corner to the exit, and somewhere along the line Richard Westbrook's Nissan got clobbered, and we saw that car in the pit lane with damage. I think that was the car there.
Yeah, it did actually hit the Aston of Thomas Enger as he went for an avoidance. There wasn't much he could do, I don't think. This was from the outside on that front row.
Yes. Stefan Mucker trying to go the long way around, the Lamborghini down the inside, and you know, you take your chances at the start of a race. There's things you can get away with and things you can't get away with. That was the Winkelhock Lamborghini that had contact with the back. I think it was a Corvette.
That was, I think it's Piccioni actually in the Aston Martin, probably the car that ended up leading later in the race, but seemed to survive that.
It looks a sad and sorry sight. Baz Lounder's Ford GT, along with the two other Belgian racing GT Fords that collided inexplicably with one another.
Yeah, that was a great shame, but certainly has whetted our appetite for some more great racing here at Zolder over the rest of the weekend. And there's some pretty good vantage points around this circuit, aren't there? You can get to see just on the left there, that top sort of level of that pits building. Great viewing from there as well. This was the moment, John, of the contact.
Look, in fairness, Schwager didn't really move at all. He was on the right-hand side. The Aston did actually go marginally from right to left. So the Aston, if anything, was the reason why the collision occurred. The Lamborghini of Mark Basseng just went straight ahead.
Yeah, that's right. But it was just that contact that bent the rear suspension on the Aston Martin, and that was the moment that it all changed, and Mark Basseng took the lead of the race. Well, he's going to be a busy boy because he's team manager as well, and there's a notice on our screen saying team managers and start drivers of cars 37 and 8, the original front row pairing, to the race director immediately. So he might be celebrating his win, but he's got to go and see the race director to argue the case for his other drivers. Mark Basseng is certainly busy. Let's take a look back over some of the highlights then of what has been a very entertaining qualifying race at Zolder. Under absolutely blue skies, perfect conditions pretty much, the cars lined up on the grid. But just as in Abu Dhabi, John, it didn't all work out at the first corner, did it?
No, and it's a totally different corner. Abu Dhabi was a 90-degree corner. This is a much more open corner. Just quite simply, one driver trying basically to go around the outside, and the car on the inside moving out to try and make the life for the car on the outside more difficult. Inevitably, collision, and effectively two cars out immediately, in fact 3 cars out immediately, and one would retire shortly after.
Yeah, great shame, and it's not what anybody wants to see, incidents like that really at the first corner, but it certainly opened the door for a couple of drivers. This was then Mucker's problem when the rear suspension failed after that. He was on a fight back through the field, but unfortunately he was going no further. And Max Martin at that point was happy because his Ford was going well. This was the moment the two Belgian racing cars took each other off.
I mean, I had both those, well, in fact, Vanina and Ickx had done nothing wrong. It was the other Ford GT, the team car. There you can get an idea from the co-driver. That's the problem here. That's a rear brake overheating. We heard Mike Hazeman saying his brake pedal didn't exist. Here's a dive down the inside. Does it work? Not this time.
No, but Fred Makovic was certainly trying everything, wasn't he, in the early stages of the race. And then, as we got towards the pit stops, he found his moment. He got past that Corvette and went on a bit of clear air. A great stop by the Hexis team, though. What a team they are for their pit stops to get that Aston, which then passed the Corvette on track to take the lead of the race.
Yeah, got more speed at that part of the race. Made a clean move into the chicane, turn 5 and 6, and job done. Fred Makovic wondering what happened. Why did I leave a car that was the quickest car on the circuit to go back to return in 7th place?
This was Marc Basseng then trying to get past the Aston, giving it just enough space. This was a good dice between them, the battle for the lead, but then this is what happened. There was the slight contact between them. It broke the right rear suspension on the Aston Martin, and Marc Basseng was able to go through to take victory. Disappointment for Hexis, but for Alinkel.com, a victory, their first. And Marcus Winkelhock and Marc Basseng now look forward to the championship race where they'll start on pole. Hope you can join us for that. Bye-bye for now.